Well, jeepers! You're listening to Smash or Pass.
Hi everyone, welcome to another video on the JayBee
Hello.
and Milly channel. We're as always joined by Smash.
Hello.
And Rhianna.
Hi.
And today we have the absolute privilege of being able to speak with Douglas Wood.
Hello.
So thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to be speaking with you today. You know, there are so many writing credits for films that we're so interested in your work, but especially one we're looking forward to speaking with you about today is Scooby Doo and the Monster of Mexico. So thank you so much.
Sure. I have to get my memory adjusted because it's been, I think, about 20 years since I wrote it.
Yeah, it's definitely been a while. I think it was released in 2003, so it would have been about the 2002 period, I'm assuming. So definitely getting up to the 20th anniversary.
Yeah.
But I guess by way of getting the audience to know who you are as a person, we've got a few background questions that I'd like to ask. And the first being, you know, you've of course published some work such as Ladies of the Canyon. And what made you want to go down this path? What made you want to become a writer?
Well, I started in the business as an actor. I worked for about 12 years as an actor. I was from Chicago. And so most of the work I did was stage work in Chicago. And I was with Second City, which is an improv company there. So improv really was the way I got into writing, because in a sense, when you're on stage and you're creating something, you are in fact writing something. So I had a partner and we had a comedy duo called The Fine Line. And we created all our own material, and that's how we got into writing. From there, people would ask us to write commercials or industrial films or things like that. So that's how the writing process started, through improvisation.
Oh, wow. And can I ask, in terms of that, were there any authors or playwrights that inspired you when you were growing up that you think influenced your career?
I was always drawn to dark material. So I always loved reading Edgar Allan Poe and some of Joyce Carol Oates' material. And in the recent years, George Saunders, and for comedy, I love David Sedaris. But I think what also influenced me were films. And I think the first adult book I read was The Bad Seed. I don't know if you're familiar with it or not. It was about a little girl who was a murderess. And she murdered a little girl to get the penmanship medal in her, at her school, elementary school. And it was made into a movie, and the movie really scared me. And the other movie that scared me was Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, which is way before your time. But it's a psychological thriller. And for me, that's what scares me most, is not supernatural horror, but just kind of human nature horror. In The Shining and Kubrick's The Shining, the scariest moment for me is when his wife, Shelley Duvall, comes upon his typewriter that he's been working at for like week after week after week. And she sees his paper in the typewriter, and all he's written is all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, over and over and over again. And she realizes she's living with this stranger that she doesn't know what's going on in his mind. So that's what intrigued me when I wrote Ladies of the Canyon.
Awesome. I love psychological thrillers. I had read a book recently. It's called Sphere by Michael Crichton. But anyway, just love that genre too. But many people watching this will know you from Monster of Mexico, which is, of course, you know, more family animation, which, you know, a lot of your credits are kind of similar in that in genre and whatever. So to what extent was writing Ladies of the Canyon, you know, as a psychological thriller, kind of a step away from this image? You know, like was that more of what you wanted to do? Kind of more of a genre you enjoyed?
Yeah, I think that's always been my sensibility, is something like Ladies of the Canyon. And my animation work is kind of the step away from me.
Yeah.
So it's a reverse of what you just said.
Okay.
I kind of fell into animation, and then once I did, I realized I loved it and had a passion for it, but it wasn't something I set out to do.
Right.
So I kind of was in the right place at the right time. And in this business, once you do something in a certain genre or a certain area, you kind of become pegged in that hole. And the work that follows generally is in the same ballpark as what you first started.
That's really interesting. And I'm sure we'll get into how you fell into like animation and everything a little bit later. But at least for us in the UK, Amazon seems to be the main seller of the book and based on readers. But also another seller is Waterstones, who they've put an interesting description of the book's characters, saying that the aging child star was probably inspired by Mackenzie Phillips and the young actress was probably inspired by Lindsay Lohan. So was this a comparison that you had previously made, or was this input on Waterstone's behalf?
I believe the Waterstones description that you just mentioned might have come from a customer. I'm not sure it was by Waterstone itself. I think it might have been someone who read the book. But it's funny that you mentioned that because that's exactly who I had in mind when I wrote the book. So whoever this person was who read the book really got it, because Mackenzie Phillips was on a primetime sitcom, One Day at a Time. And the production was always plagued by her various exploits. And then Lindsay Lohan, of course, had her own tabloid exploits. So I thought it'd be interesting to put those two generations together and see what sparks would fly.
And if the book was made into, like a series or a movie, would those be the kind of about the talents that you'd have in mind, or do you think that they would probably find some other actors or actresses?
Probably some other actors or actresses. I think it's the portrayal of those two isn't in the most pleasant light. So I doubt if they would want to play those characters. It probably hits a little too close to home. But I've always thought for the character of Nikki, the older character, Parker Posey would be great. She's someone that she's in a lot of independent films, and she's a wonderful actress. And for the younger role, I thought that Elle Fanning would be good. She's doing a lot of work these days, and she's amazing.
Well, that sounds absolutely incredible. And maybe their kind of chemistry on screen potentially could be something to explore as well. But of course, having published this quite recently, the climate of the planet hasn't necessarily been the friendliest in terms of social interactions and everything. So, depending on when the book was published, were you able to ever attend signings for the book at all? And if so, what have been some of your memories, like your favorite memories from these?
Yeah, unfortunately, the book was published in 2020, so the pandemic was going strong. And because of that, I was unable to do any book signings or conventions or anything like that. So it's unfortunate. It came out at the worst possible time.
That is a shame, but it's a book that comes across really well. As you say, people seem to resonate with it really well, in that they picked up those character descriptions so perfectly that that in itself speaks volumes. So can I ask, if you were to look to the future here and write another book, would you be looking at perhaps doing something of a sequel, or would you be wanting to work on another kind of independent project?
I think I would go in a different direction. I'd probably still write something kind of dark and character driven, but I feel like I've done the Hollywood thing. I would probably go somewhere else. I did write a screenplay that I'm thinking of adapting into a book, and it's set in a world that I'm also very familiar with, which is, we call them here in the United States garage sales. I think you call them boot sales.
Yeah, car boot sales.
Yeah. I'm very familiar. I used to go to London all the time, so I would go to Piccadilly. I'm sorry, you know what I'm talking about. Not Piccadilly, but the famous flea market, Portobello Road.
Yes.
Portobello Road and Camden. So I would go there when I was in London. But here, you can, in LA, because of the weather, you can go to garage sales every weekend of the year. So I find a lot of antiques and collectibles. And it's a strange little subculture of the world, people who go to these things and why people are selling things in the first place. So my screenplay was about this world, and it's called As Is. And it's about this funky subculture of people who collect antiques and garage sales items.
That sounds really interesting. It's certainly something that I'd like to read. So let's hope, that could be adapted into a book. And of course, one thing that we are really excited to be speaking with you about today is Scooby Doo and the Monster of Mexico and how all that came to be. So I guess with the early stages of Scooby Doo, did you watch it growing up? Did you go back and revisit some old episodes, old movies when you were asked to write the movie?
Well, it's really funny. I was a little bit older than the main era of when Scooby Doo came out, so I didn't really grow up with it. But certainly I was aware of it. How could you not be aware of Scooby Doo? But when I was hired to write the film, I had never seen an episode of Scooby Doo. So they provided me with tons of videotapes, and I just went through them. And then I could see how appealing it was and why it was so popular. I thought the characters are really charming, and the concept of it, the mysteries, really intrigued me. And I thought, it's definitely something I could see being popular on a very wide scale. So I was really thrilled to be writing for it and following that great legacy.
Awesome. That sounds so fun. And with that kind of, you going through those and what they handed to you, did you find a member of Mystery Inc. that you enjoyed the most?
I liked writing for Velma.
Yeah.
She's kind of an offbeat character, so that kind of intrigued me. I like writing for women more than men for some reason. It's kind of fun to put your mind in someone else's psyche. So Velma was a lot of fun to write for, but also, they're all fun. I liked writing for Shaggy too.
Yeah. Awesome. And did you ever find like an episode or something that you really enjoyed going back through while getting ready for this movie?
I'm sure I did, but it's been a long time.
Yeah.
So I don't remember.
It's all good.
Honestly, when you mentioned that you really enjoyed writing for Velma, when I watch this movie, I always gravitate towards how Velma is in it, because I feel like there's something slightly different, but it works so well and I love it so much. So I guess going more on to the Monster of Mexico, how did you come to write for Scooby Doo and the Monster of Mexico?
I was working as a film executive at Amblin Entertainment, which is Steven Spielberg's company. And when I was working with Spielberg, I hired a story editor, and his name is Christopher Keenan. And he eventually went to Warner Brothers and became a very big executive there. And then he went on to go to Mattel. He's currently at Mattel, and he's like head of the world. I don't know. He's got some very high title. He's a great, intelligent executive, really good taste. And he and I, because we worked together for Spielberg, he's the one who hired me when he went to Warner Brothers to write Monster of Mexico. And basically what he did was he wanted to, I think it was the second animated feature for DVD. So he came to me with the idea of doing it in Mexico. And I really liked that because I love Mexican culture. And then he also gave me the concept of the Chupacabra monster, which actually I think was more in lore, I think from Puerto Rico, possibly, or not necessarily Mexico, but I think it's well known in Mexico. So he gave me those two elements. And from there, I created a story based on that. And one of the elements I brought in was the Day of the Dead, because it's something that I personally love myself. I have lots of skeletons in my office. And I love the culture, and I love the sentiment behind Day of the Dead, that people who celebrate it are celebrating the lives of the lost. And it's not a somber thing. So if you go there, I went to Mexico and I saw some cemeteries, and they're very vibrant gravestones with all sorts of whimsical things there. I was also in Guanajuato, which has a mummy museum. And I guess the topography there, there's like tar-like substances there. So people who had died are kind of preserved, and they dug them up and put them in a museum, which sounds really creepy. But families would go there and they'd have like little lollipops with, dead skeletons or mummies on them. And it was like a family thing. So I found that very refreshing.
Oh, that's really interesting. And I will admit, this movie actually made me want to learn more about like the Day of the Dead, because we don't really at school in England, we don't learn about those kinds of things. So it made me more curious about the meaning of it. So I went back and I did a lot of research. And this movie, it means so much to the fan base of Scooby Doo for so many reasons. And one of these is that it's actually the final time that the original cast members from the show, except for Don Messick, would play the characters. And did you know this when writing for the movie?
Yes, they told me about that, and I was thrilled. And I was actually part of the voice session, the recording session for the 4 main characters, not for the supporting characters, but for the 4 main characters. So I met them all, Casey Kasem, and as you mentioned. So it was really fun to see them in 2002. Having seen all these videos now of all the work they did. They were really wonderful and really talented.
Wow, that is absolutely incredible, and that must have been such a cool experience. But I guess for all you say that you weren't involved in the recording sessions for the supporting characters when writing lines of dialogue, for example, with all the families, Candy Milo's character, were you aware of any of their voices for them at the time?
I wasn't, but I have to say I was absolutely thrilled when I found out that Rita Moreno was going to play a character, and in fact she did. She won a Grammy, an Emmy, an Oscar, a Tony. She's this living legend, and she's now in West Side Story, the remake. So the fact that she played a role was exciting to me too. Now I can say I've written for Rita Moreno.
That must have been just so cool, and just hearing you talking about it, because it's just a movie that holds a special place in my heart. I remember going to work with my mum as a kid, and it would always be one of the DVDs that she'd pack for me to watch if I was like feeling bored or anything. And I just loved it so much, and all the music as well. It's just absolutely amazing. And a big part about that, like we've mentioned, is the setting of Mexico, which you say that was the idea was pitched to you, but was that concept, like, did you have to write around the Mexico setting, or did to what extent was your input into the Mexican culture a part in the movie?
Well, I really like to do a lot of research because it makes my job easier. You get so many ideas once you go online and do research. So I was looking for any kind of element that I could really capitalize on. And one of the things, I wasn't sure where to set it in Mexico because there's so many different cities and towns, villages. And I came across Veracruz, and I was intrigued that it is really well known for its coffee beans. I think that it's climate-wise very special. And so the beans there are supposedly the best in the world. So I thought, well, that's kind of an interesting element. And selling coffee beans is commerce and brings in money. And then I thought, well, that could tie into someone's motivation. So that's why I settled on Veracruz. And then I did some information on Mexican history and the pyramids and all those things that come into play, the scary stuff that I didn't know quite that much about. So that's how I tapped into that. It's amazing what you can find online. I mean, I really wonder what writers used to do before the internet. They must have just gone to the library and looked through all these books, but here you have the world at your fingertips. So I did a lot of online research.
If you don't mind me asking quickly, was the Monster of Mexico title already set when you were writing this, or were there any other concepts for the title of the film that kind of got rejected or vetoed?
I do remember that it might have been called Scooby Doo and the Chupacabra Monster. And then I think Warner Brothers changed it because they thought it was too specific to an area, not necessarily Mexico. So I think they wanted to get it right. And so it was changed to Scooby Doo and the Monster of Mexico. I'm glad, because it has Monster in Mexico in the title, and that's exactly what the movie is about. So, you know, it is what it is.
Plus, I think just like the alliteration of the two M's kind of works quite well.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that tend to be quite great in it, and I think it's a really good title. I do. But a couple of questions that I wanted to ask was, firstly, I know you were saying that this movie did come out 19 years ago. It was, you know, you were working on it about 20 years ago. Was there a gap between it being written and the cast and directors starting to work on it? Because we've spoken with people who were writing scripts in, say, the late 1990s for movies that were coming out in 2002. So was there that kind of gap for you, or was it quite a, you know, quick moving process?
Yeah, there's always a gap when it comes to animation because it takes so long. So I probably started that maybe in 2002. Wrote it, you know, when you're hired to write it, you write first an outline, then you write a first draft, you get notes, then you write a second draft, you get notes, and sometimes you write a polish. And sometimes you even get notes at that stage. I don't think I did, though. So I wrote various drafts of it, and it changed a little bit from draft to draft. And then when it's done, it goes into, I think the first step is they record voices based on the script so that the animators can animate to the voices. If you do it the other way around, the actors have to kind of match picture. But once it goes to the actors, then it's storyboarded, and they create an animatic or story reel, which is kind of like a moving storyboard. It's not animated, it's just pictures. You probably know that. And then from the animatic stage, it goes into animation. So it is a long process, and by the time it comes out, it's a good year, year and a half after you first started writing it.
That's, oh gosh, I mean, it is so interesting to speak with you and hear kind of that more behind the scenes of the process, because, you know, things like learning about the artwork that would be behind doing that storyboard for almost prompting the voice recordings and things like that, you know, it is a great insight to have. It's such an interesting process. And also my next question was going to be that I know you said that you had a really good knowledge already of Mexico and like the Day of the Dead, but also that research was so impressive, because when you were talking about researching the coffee beans, instantly in my head I was like, and that's how they work this out, and it's just really nice how everything came into play. Do you think that because of your knowledge of Mexico and the passion that you had for it, it was very much in your head, you kind of knew the direction that you wanted to go in more or less instantly, or do you think the research did play a big part?
I think a little of both. You know, it's always hard to write if you don't have passion for what you're writing. So I've done plenty of that. Unfortunately, when you're hired to write something and you need the work, you take it and try to make the best of it and try to get passionate about it. But because this was Mexico right off the bat, I thought, I'm there, you know, this is great. And also after having looked at all the videos of Scooby Doo, I was really excited to be writing for it and really proud that they brought me on board and grateful because, as you know, Scooby is just known around the world and it's much beloved by so many people. So I was really grateful to ask to be a part of that.
Awesome. And, you know, I think Mexico is somewhere the gang, at least we'll say at that point, they hadn't traveled to Mexico a whole lot. There were kind of episodes here and there, but, you know, I think this was fun to have a full-length movie where they got to dive into Mexico. And kind of speaking more of the writing of the movie, you know, you said that there's a few different drafts that you have to do. So how long do you think it took you to write for the movie?
I think the hardest part is always the outline because that's truly where all the beats of the story get worked out. And then once you get those worked out, the first draft is kind of a pleasure to write because all the hard decisions have been made. Yeah. But I would say from beginning, when I was first given the job till the polished draft, was probably maybe 3 months, I would guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, nice. And are there any concepts or anything that you can remember that you had in the story that ended up not being in the final product?
No, but I do know that I tend to write older. And so I had some jokes in there that got cut and some language even that got cut. Just one example is, I can't remember which character it is, but she calls someone a nasty name. And I originally had used scumbag. And apparently scumbag is a horrible word. It means something completely different for kids. And so that got changed to something you probably would know more than I.
I think
having
it's
seen it.
probably the scene where they're sitting around talking about
Yeah.
Senor Fuente, and the kind of grandma character is like, he's what you say, a jerk? And
Jerk, yeah.
that's probably that
Yeah.
scene.
That's
wow.
it.
That's
That
incredible.
was it. And then Christopher Keenan, who I mentioned before, has bonds to Mexico too. I think he even has a home there now. And he's very close with someone who is from Mexico. So he was a great editor in terms of knowing if I got things right. You know, I translated things through a translator online. Sometimes it doesn't transfer completely accurately. So he was great about that.
That's amazing. And finding out like about the joke that it was supposed to be a different word as well kind of takes me back a little bit to our Kent Bader interview. But watching the movie's take on El Chupacabra is quite different from any depiction seen in the media and different laws throughout history and different cultures. Was this a conscious decision?
Yes, it was. I think Warner Brothers really wanted a monster, but they didn't want something really scary. And I believe chupacabras, if I'm right, they eat goats.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like rabbit
and that's
dogs
just kind of
almost.
creepy, and we didn't want to go there. So we kind of refined the monster a little bit. I don't think we stayed completely true to the lore of the chupacabra because it's a little too gory. But hopefully just the name Chupacabra, if anyone's interested, they'll do their own research and learn something.
I really hope so, because Scooby has inspired me to, you know, as I mentioned before, do a lot of research. And I can just picture, for some reason, El Chupacabra thinking that Scooby was a goat, if like it was true to what actually happened.
That's a good idea, actually, of the Chupacabra thinking that it's a ghost. That's funny.
And I will admit, El Chupacabra, every time during the beginning sequence where it's just hit the green eyes floating is like in the title, I get chills and I am still scared to this day. But it's a good kind of scared.
That's funny.
And so we watched the DVD bonus features, which included the making of section, but we didn't actually see you in the studios at all. So were you present while they were filming this?
No, I wasn't present. I do remember writing some material for it. I didn't write the whole thing. I remember I wrote something for the extras, but I can't remember now what it was. But I wasn't involved in the making of that film.
Thank you.
So of course, with the Monster of Mexico being like a direct-to-DVD release, of course, there wasn't like a cinematic premiere as such. But once the movie did come out on DVD, were you sent copies to view at all, or did someone host almost like a first watch-along type thing, or how did that work out?
I think I was sent a bunch of copies of it, of the DVD, which was great, really fun to get those. I don't think there was any kind of wrap party or celebration for a DVD movie, probably because the animators all go on to other projects and maybe they're hard to track down. And it's not like, and the actors, you know, it's not like a movie set where they're all together physically in the same place for months and months and then they celebrate together. So sorry to say, I was not. However, I was part of several parties when I wrote for other Warner Brothers shows like Tiny Toon Adventures, and Animaniacs. And we had big parties on the Warner Brothers lot, and it was dressed like the set was dressed like the show itself. So that was fun.
That sounds amazing. And I guess based upon you saying, you know, that you might have been sent some copies of the DVD, when you did finally watch the movie back through again, what did you think about the final product that they came out with?
Well, I was really happy with it. And the funny thing is, most of what I write I never watch them when they're finished. Maybe because I just don't like to see my own work, or I don't know, but I very rarely watch my own work. But the few times that I have, I'm always very self-critical. So they never match the ideal version that I have in my head. But when I watched Scooby Doo and the Monster of Mexico, I have to say I was really pleasantly surprised, and I really liked it. And I tested it out on my niece, who at the time was maybe about 10, I guess. So I watched it with her, and she loved it, and I felt like that was validation. But I think Warner Brothers did a great job with it, and it was very, very faithful to the script. You know, sometimes somebody changes a line or changes a scene or whatever, and you're not involved in it. But in this case, they were very faithful to the script, and it made me very happy.
That's amazing. It's so good to hear. And I guess it kind of may overwrite this question slightly, but is there anything that you were disappointed that was cut out or that you would like to have included? Obviously, you were kind of saying that Mexico was something that was of interest to you, and it was great because you got to write about something that you actually were really interested in. But do you think to any extent it was because you were interested, you were perhaps more passionate about it, so there was more you wanted to include that was perhaps accurate to a history that wasn't thought by Warner Brothers suitable to be included, or anything like that?
Well, I have to say Warner Brothers was very receptive to everything, and I was, so no, they really didn't cut anything out. I was expecting that they might, because usually when you write, that always happens. But they were very, they really were very gracious and accepting of everything. Very, very little, maybe a line here or there was cut, but that's about it.
Again, like, it's good to hear that, you know, everything was embraced by them and that you got that freedom to kind of write, and clearly something that you were interested in and knew a lot about, and that comes through really well. And another question I had about the extras, I think Rhianna kind of started to mention this before. There's one extra, I know you said you wrote something where I think is it Frank Welker and Casey Kasem were commentating almost over the movie in their characters. Do you remember if you had anything to do with those lines or anything like that? I was just wondering if because of the characterization or anything. I
think I might have. Before this interview, I looked in my computer to see what I had written, but I think it was done on another computer, and I never saved the disc or something. So because I was gonna bone up on that and answer your questions about that, but I don't remember that. But I think you're right. It might have been what you mentioned.
That's so fun. I kind of miss they don't do that anymore.
No,
they
the bonus features are not what they used to be.
No.
Yeah.
Let's get you back to writing at least those commentaries or something. But speaking of, after you finished the movie, was there any talks of you writing another Scooby Doo movie?
There was, but unfortunately at the time I was already on other projects. So schedule-wise, we could never make it work. But Christopher was very happy and intended to bring me aboard, but I think I was working on, it might have been Little Einsteins at the time, can't remember, but it was something else. I was story editing another show.
Well, then we got to bring you back now.
Yeah, I'd love to write one. I'd love to write a live action version of it too.
Ooh, that'd be fun.
We would really like another live action movie. This year is the 20th anniversary for the first one of those. And as far as we know, Warner Brothers didn't have any plans. So if we could have had you write another live action movie, that would have certainly been a good celebration for it.
Yeah. Have you seen The Iron Giant?
Yes, it's one of them. Actually, I think it was the one that used to make me cry when I was little. I was a sensitive kid.
I was the executive on that show and was involved in the development of it with Brad Bird. And Warner Brothers, for some reason, didn't get behind that movie when it first came out. And so it didn't do particularly well at the box office. And then when it came out on DVD, they had it got great reviews, by the way. And when it came out on DVD, Warner Brothers had the option or the possibility of really promoting it at that stage. And they never really did. So it's one of those movies that didn't have a huge audience, but through the years, it's developed like a cult following. And obviously Brad Bird went on to great success with Ratatouille and The Incredibles and Mission Impossible. So he had the last laugh.
Yeah.
I think the Iron
Left all the
Giant
way to the back.
also had a reference in Ready Player One. I think that's the same Iron Giant.
Yes.
Mhm.
Oh, really?
So yeah, beloved character.
And wasn't he in the new Space Jam for a brief moment?
Oh, I admit I haven't seen the new Space Jam.
Oh, okay. I
I'll
think
look into it.
I don't know. It's been like over a year since I've seen that, but like I think he appeared at some moment.
Oh, yeah, I haven't seen that.
So with Monster in Mexico being celebrating 20 years next year, is there anything that you would like to say to fans that still love the writing of this movie?
Just thank you to them. You know, writers don't have jobs unless there's audiences. So it's so gratifying. You know, you write and you're sitting at your computer in your home, and when it's animated like that, they don't have big premieres in movie theaters or anything. So you're kind of writing in a void. So when I do shows like this and hear your opinions on things, it's very gratifying to know, oh, I guess this really did reach an audience and people enjoy it. So I never tire of hearing that. It's really great. I went to a party a year or so ago with parents of young children, and they had seen all these preschool shows that I had written, and I felt like a rock star at this party because usually nobody really knows that kind of stuff because I hang out with people my age. But hearing these mothers and kids, or sometimes I run into college-age kids or older who grew up with Scooby or watched the Scooby Doo shows while they were in college too, because I think it's one of those shows that has an older audience as well as a younger one for kids. I think a lot of adults still get into it.
Definitely. And to us, you're a rock star because you have given us one of the most amazing movies. So unfortunately, we're going on to the final few questions, which is upsetting because we've loved speaking to you. But if you're approached to write another Scooby-Doo movie or even a Scooby-Doo novel, because there's been a couple that have come out, like Daphne and Velma, written by Morgan Baden, and I can't remember the other woman's name. My mind's gone blank. But would you be interested in writing one?
Absolutely. I would be there in a minute to write another one. You know, the characters are so well defined, and it's a joy to write for characters that have very specific characteristics and have funny little quirky aspects of their personality to write for. So that's why I think it's fun and fun to write for. I would do that in a second. I don't know if you're aware, there's a sitcom that was done in the early 60s in America called Dobie Gillis. Have you ever heard of that?
Don't believe I have.
No.
It was even a little bit before my time, but it had 4 main characters. The lead character was called Dobie Gillis, and he was very much kind of like a Fred character. He looked like that too. And then there was a character called Maynard G. Krebs, who was a lot like Shaggy. He had kind of a beard, a kind of a goatee. And then there was a really beautiful blonde woman who was very much like Daphne, and she was played by a famous blonde actress. Her name will come to me in a moment. Tuesday Weld. And then Velma was, there was a character much like Velma, and she was played by a woman named Sheila Kuehl. And Sheila Kuehl went on to have a career in politics, and I think might even been a mayor of West Hollywood. So some people say that Scooby Doo was based on those 4 characters. And I haven't Googled it, but you might want to Google it. Just Google Dobie Gillis and Scooby Doo and see what comes up.
Yeah, we'll definitely give that a go. And like Rhianna was saying, it's just so great to talk to you. I want to manifest even a Monster of Mexico sequel. That would be kind of fun.
That would be fun. Yeah.
So I guess
think there's a lot to mine there.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, go.
So I guess my final question before I hand it off to JayBee to wrap it all up. Do you have any upcoming projects that you can share with us?
Well, I've been working for 2 years now, and I'm almost done with the show for Apple TV. Unfortunately, it's tight security, so I can't say the name of it, but it's a preschool show based on very successful New York Times best-selling books for kids. And it's a preschool show. It's really cute. And I'm executive producing it as well as the head writer on it. So it's the first time I've actually produced a movie from beginning to end. And that's been a great experience. I really learned a lot. So that comes out probably towards the end of this year. You'll see it on Apple TV. Do you get Apple TV in the UK?
I think you can. It's like a subsection of iTunes, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I can't tell you the name, but I'll email it to you in a few months when I'm able to.
I mean, that sounds absolutely fantastic. And do you have a website at all or any social media that people can follow to keep up to date with your work?
Sure. There's a Wikipedia page with my name. And then my personal website is writewoodinc.com, and it's spelled Writewood, W-R-I-T-E, Wood, Inc, I-N-K.com. And I have 2 short films that I directed and wrote on there that you can watch. And a plug for my book, which, let's see. Might as well take this opportunity and do a shameless self-promotion.
Do it, yes.
Ladies of the Canyon.
Wow.
Yes.
I think it's available on Barnes & Noble and Amazon.
Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely be sure to have links to the Wikipedia, to the website, and obviously trying to find where we can anywhere that's selling the book, because I think definitely after this, one of the things way up on my priority list is to try and track down some copies of it that we can get in the UK, because it just sounds absolutely amazing. And thank you so much. And I guess, we're sad now because I think this interview, more than a lot of the other ones, I'm almost like, okay, can we like rush and come up with more questions? But thank you so much for your time, because it's just been incredible.
You've had great questions, and I think you've got a great podcast. You're obviously very enthusiastic about what you do, so it's a real pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
based upon that, thank you everyone watching this. You can find, obviously I've said, links to all of those in the description down below. Also, huge thank you to Smash, who has a YouTube channel. We'll link that in the description down below as well, along with all of Rhianna's social media links. And so yeah, this has been another interview on the JayBee and Milly channel. Please make sure to like, comment and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.